Joe Kwaczala is here. Now, Joe,
yes.
We've been alluding to this, the Rock Hall. I'd never say his name right. Jan
Wenner.
Is out because he said the most ridiculous things in an interview.
Yeah.
In fact, friend of the show, Chris Grace, wrote me a text saying, have you read this interview? He's fucking nuts.
Well, because it's not a gotcha interview. The interviewer is not trying to hang him.
No.
Truly, it's not even like giving him enough rope to hang himself. It's Jan driving to Home Depot in his own car, grabbing some rope. It's crazy. Like, he is given every opportunity to not say the craziest things in the world, and he just does it. I get the sense because he doesn't care.
It's that.
Yeah. And I also strongly believe, so he hasn't really been that involved in the Rock Hall, certainly in a leadership position for a while. He was the chairman up until 2020. And my opinion is that as soon as he was just a board member, they've wanted a reason to kick him out.
Okay.
You see how quickly that happened?
Oh, it happened. There was no discussion of it. It just happened.
Among this board, which is a lot of older white guys who, I don't know them personally, but I would imagine behind closed doors have maybe said similar things.
Right.
It happened so fast. Apparently the vote at the board to remove him was unanimous, except for a guy named John Landau, who was a longtime friend of Jan Wenner. For years ran the nominating committee under Jan Wenner. He was basically a lame duck. They were kind of giving him the board seat as like, yes,
it's you. We have to.
You
co-founded this thing.
Yeah, involved in stealing this idea from a guy decades ago. So we have to appreciate you. But yeah, it was like, no, as soon as we can get this, whatever it was, they were going to be ready to get rid of him.
Right. It to your point, by the way, about what they say behind scenes, just the fact that it's taken so long for women to get into the Rock Hall, to be acknowledged. It's like, there's no question that happened. Well, we can only get one a year. Really?
Yeah.
And then finally that started changing, luckily. So
if you didn't see it, like the gist of it is he basically just said that black artists and women aren't articulate enough to be put on the same level as a Mick Jagger, I guess.
Because he's releasing a book of his interviews.
Right.
A lot of them,
Masters.
Yeah, called The Masters. A lot of them, it's supposed to be like a compilation of the interviews he's done, his years at Rolling Stone, including one new interview with Mick Jagger. But it's all Pete Townsend, Bob Dylan, Bono. It's all
John Lennon.
Yeah, right. And he was asked, why only white guys? And that was his response.
Yeah.
It was just he didn't think there were any women artists or black artists.
Said it out loud.
Who were articulate enough to give him what he wanted.
And then he said, as if to foresee the trouble that this comment would cause, he was like, now let me preemptively try to answer something that someone might say, like, what about Joni Mitchell? Nope, she's not smart.
That's what,
like fuck, what?
Yeah.
Like, why did Joni Mitchell get hurt at all in that conversation? Like,
and she's absolutely
so not true.
Yeah.
Well, I told you, I was in the car once listening to an interview and thinking, this is the best interview I've ever listened to in my life about music. Who is this person? And then they finally went, we're talking with Joni Mitchell. I'm like, oh, so he's wrong.
Yeah. I didn't understand if you meant like they're not articulate enough in interviews, or they weren't articulate enough to have written songs that were good enough to be considered like lyrically.
I think he meant interviews.
Okay, so I misunderstood that part because I was like, well, Joni Mitchell's one of the greatest fucking songwriters of all time.
Yeah, without question.
How is this argument?
And also, Rolling Stone has always been good to Joni Mitchell. It's not like there's an artist who they never really gave any cred. Mm-hmm. No, I mean, it didn't make a lot of sense. I feel like he is. He doesn't give a shit anymore.
Yeah.
It's very obvious.
Well, now the whole world doesn't give a shit about him anymore, so it all worked out.
Yeah, it's interesting because he's also been the scapegoat for the Rock Hall for a long time, and I think the board probably feels like, even though he hasn't really had a lot of, even before he resigned from the chair position, he wasn't in the nominating committee anymore for like at least a decade.
Oh,
it's like,
but he still would get all the blame.
He would get all the blame. Yeah. And now with him officially gone, with like this big, even though he's kind of officially gone before, it's getting enough press that I think it will have an impact of people being like, good riddance. Now the monkeys can get
it. it will be interesting this coming year to see what happens, because they know they don't have that. Well, we can keep this person out because Jan's going to get the blame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He did seem to have, just for what I read in the aftermath of this, he seemed to have an oddly high number of like personal beefs and grudges and issues with people. Like he kept Paul McCartney out. Like he hated McCartney, right?
He did not hate McCartney.
Oh, okay. What's the deal?
The situation with that, and it goes to the kind of disparity between what people think Jan is capable of within the Rock Hall and the reality.
Okay.
Which is that John Lennon, as a solo artist, after the Beatles had been inducted,
Right.
got in on his first year of eligibility.
Yeah.
And Paul inducted him. But there was kind of an agreement between Paul and Jan that I will do this, but next year I become eligible solo. I would love to get inducted. And Jan is like, Jan's a starfucker. He's like, yes, absolutely. Like, we will do that. Thank you. But Jan doesn't really have the ability to do that. He can bring up Paul McCartney's name at the nominating committee in 95, which is when this was, but he can't push it through. Even though you might think someone with that level of power could.
Okay.
Ahmet Erdogan, Jan Wenner, Seymour Stein, these guys who are really powerful and could sometimes push their artists through. Not always.
Still has to be voted.
Yeah, it has to be voted. And he brought up McCartney, and they didn't. 95 was also a huge year. It was like Zeppelin was first eligible, Janis Joplin, Al Green. So McCartney did not make the nominating list, and McCartney got mad.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. So he took it as a slight or like a betrayal.
He essentially believed, you promised me that I would get in.
Also, he should.
Yeah, no, McCartney should have been in, but it was just, especially mid 90s, like I said, it was a crowded field. Like, I think Pink Floyd was eligible, still didn't get in, which is crazy to think. Like Bowie.
That is crazy.
Like, so there were just so many of these like kind of monster pillars of rock and roll. It would just be hard to get everybody in.
I thought I also saw that that Rolling Stone they were pretty like harsh on reviewing Wings albums like at the time.
That's also possibly true, but I also believe that Jan would do everything in his power to maintain his relationship with McCartney.
Yeah, makes sense.
And then, eventually McCartney was inducted just in 99. And he came and he's been a kind of a mainstay at the Rock Hall since then. So there was a slight beef.
Okay.
But that is my laborious explanation.
Right, very good. Thank you for clearing the record.
Thank you for coming, Joe.
To hear the whole conversation, subscribe for free on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, or visit nevernotfunny.com.